So the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Honors Weekend 2024, part of this year's honors class, is our guest today on the Legends podcast. It's distinguished member Coleman Scott, a three-time high school state champion from Waynesburg Central, four-time NCAA Division I All-American, and a national champion, and probably the highlight of a career littered with accolades is the Olympic bronze medal back in 2012. And Coleman, you are coming up on 20 years from your high school graduation, now coming in as this next generation of distinguished members. The first thing I want to start with is when you got the call, when you got the email, when you got the notification, what was your first response to, holy crud, I'm in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, sort of surreal. Leroy called me. I was actually in Albania at U23 Worlds last fall, and wasn't sure why he was calling me, but sort of couldn't believe him. Thought he was messing with me at first. We go a long ways back, so but yeah, very surreal. Just couldn't believe that it really wasn't a thought of mine to be at this level or be even considered for the Hall of Fame, and I never even thought about that I would be on the ballot or on the docket. So just very cool and very honored to get the call.
What names pop into your mind when you hear National Wrestling Hall of Fame?
Pretty much every idol that we've had growing up, right? I mean, you look at the sport from for me going through the '90s when I really fell in love with the sport, and Kendall Cross and those guys, and Kerry Collat being from the same hometown in Greene County and or same area, same county. Those are the guys that pop in my head and go, wow, I didn't even, I never put myself on their level, right? I always thought that it just really wasn't a thought for mine. It was just be the best person I can be in the moment. But I never had that thought that I could be at their level and even be considered at their level. So it was something for me that like I said, very surreal, very honored just to get the call.
You talked about when you fell in love with the sport. How did that process go? Like when did wrestling first put itself into your world?
I first started probably when I was about 6 years old. My grandfather really got me into it. He wrestled all the way through high school, and and then went into the Navy, and really was always adamant. At a young age, I remember just hey, you need to give this a try. And I think when I was that was when I was six. About 10 years old was the '96 games in Atlanta, which we had a little bit more, I would say, coverage or thought or something, whatever you want to call it. Just stateside, just it being in Atlanta and being around wrestling, and I paid attention. And I really remember that team and Kendall specifically. What he did in that moment, and putting Sasuri to his back and all that stuff that I watched. Probably VHS recorded at 2 a.m. or whatever it was to watch the next day. Just whatever was on TV, you sort of just did that. But I think I fell in love. I realized what the pinnacle of the sport was that year. At probably about 10 years old, I realized that there's no professional league, but that's freaking cool. He's got red, white, and blue. He's got the USA across his chest. Like, that's what I want to do. And that's really where the love started for wrestling, and really just putting myself in, always thinking about, hey, I can do that. And then, a couple years later, 4 years later, a couple years later with Kerry, really making that run and being from the same area and knowing some of his family and him for a long time, right? Like just following that path and what he did so closely. It really hit home. Hey, maybe I can do this. Maybe this is something that it's real. Somebody from 5 minutes down the road's doing it right now. And one of the best in the world. So I continued just wanting to do that. So that probably that 4 to 5 years right there from 10 to 14, and really just fell in love with it. And it was just the people close to me, and they made it a realization, when you watch it and say, hey, I think I can do that. I want to do that. At least I'm going to give everything I got.
How quickly did success come to you when you first got into the sport?
Um, fairly quickly. It's probably a better question for my dad and my little league coaches, Joe Throckmorton and those guys, because I don't necessarily remember what the credentials I had as a little league and junior high. I know I was successful, and fell in love with it because of the success. It's easier to like something when you have a little success early on. But I was fairly successful. I won probably a couple state titles at the PJW level, at the state level, couple probably Tulsa national titles, stuff like that. So it really, I remember having success, but I don't necessarily remember what all I did at a younger age. It wasn't. It was never glorified, in my house
Mm-hmm.
to just, it wasn't about just winning and getting trophies. And that's where my parents did an unbelievable job of keeping me humble and keeping me into the realization of what this is about. Let's just be better every day. Let's continue to chase things that you've always wanted to chase. And, that next level, how do you get to that next level? There's always something more. And that's just where my family really stuck. And I don't even know if they know what I had success at a young age.
In Western Pennsylvania, the cultivation of talent in the whole state entirely, but there's that pride of Western PA, and then
Mm-hmm.
obviously Waynesburg Central just emits like blue collar atmosphere. The whole area.
Oh
You
yeah.
talk about Greene County, and you get into high school. We're looking at your background. Okay, you've got 3 PA state titles there. That's kind of rare air to begin with. You place as a freshman. I'm looking at some of the weights now. Those who are coming through in your era, these are names. You talk about Tulsa. These are names that you see through the youth circuit. Okay, you wrestle Brad Pataki in the finals as
Mm-hmm.
a finals as a sophomore. In that weight, Mark McKnight's in that weight. Tim Harner, Nate Noroth, Clint Shirk, Garrett Barbush, Morgan Boblet, Steve Middich, Alex Crom. And not all those guys place, and that's just your sophomore year. We get further along, you see these guys later on. But at what point do you know that, man, not only I'm having some success here, which you said you stayed grounded with, but like when you start winning against these guys that are also like they've got some accolades, the internet's starting to get there in the late '90s. You're kind of in that early run of the internet rankings generation. So at what point do you realize that there's some pretty good guys around you, and I'm beating some pretty good guys in the process?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Being from southwestern Pennsylvania, you grow up and every weekend, you wrestle Mark McKnight, Donnie Jones, Adam Fry, right? That's a bracket at a podunk tournament in southwestern Pennsylvania, and you see him every weekend, literally every Saturday. That's who we're wrestling, right? And a lot more than that. So growing up, I knew that I don't say battle tested, but you knew these guys were winning at a high level as well around the country. And those big tournaments that we used to go to in Tulsa Nationals, and I think there was one in Detroit, one in Topeka, Kansas back in the day. And so these guys are winning around you, and then you got to see them every freaking weekend, right? And it just continues into high school. And I think everybody from PA's got that pride of we are the best, and we still are the best, and we produce at a very high level. And it's no secret, right? Again, every Saturday, every Sunday that you're wrestling up there, you're wrestling against the best kids in the country, not just the best kids in the area. And we're not afraid to step out and sort of test yourself in the waters at every tournament around the country. There's never a thought process of I need to protect anything. And I don't know if I ever thought of it that I was beating these good guys. I knew they were good. The whole state's good. I think that we as Pennsylvanians, that's what we are the best, and that's what you think. So if you're at that pinnacle, no matter what weight class, no matter what double A, triple, you're going to beat some guys that are very, very high level and will be very successful in life, and wrestling beyond high school as well.
Of your 3 state finals, Brad Pataki had a pretty good career in college as well. Brad Canterbury placed multiple times in Fargo growing up, and
Mm-hmm.
then Charles Griffin, who really emerged his senior year, had a really good career at Hofstra. And of those 3 state titles, which one do you remember the most? Which one are you most fond of?
Senior year, Charles Griffin. I had won state title at I think 112 the year prior to, and Charles had won 125 the year, both of our junior years, and so it was like the marquee matchup. I went up to 25, probably only weighed 128, maxed out, right? 20, maybe 130 that year, maybe. And so I remember it just being the marquee matchup of the whole state tournament, people talking about it, what's going to happen. Coleman's coming up 2 weight classes. Can he handle this guy? Charles was a couple times, maybe 2 or 3 time All-American at Hofstra, always a little bit bigger than me. once we got to college. But just a lot of respect for him, and what he did, those last couple of years of high school, and just remember that match vividly in the sense that it was tied late and then ended up getting a reversal to his back, I just a few moments walking into the arena and people talking about it and with their buddies, hey, this is, who's going to win? Who's this, Scott or Griffith? Just hearing all the chatter through the whole weekend about that match. And that probably makes it more special to me. And being our senior year, my senior year, and going out on top and, jumping up 2 weight classes from junior to senior year to sort of, I don't want to say prove a point, but make sure that I was, my thought process was I was going to have to wrestle 25 in college the next year anyway. So I might as well start now. It is what it is type of thing. So that's by far my most vivid memory of high school.
You had mentioned the reversal to his back, and there's one of the early
Mm-hmm.
memories I have of you is we've talked about this probably multiple times. It's almost every time we run into each other, we talk about the old days. Is your win against Mike Rowe in the Beast of These
Mm-hmm.
finals, 2003-2004, where you are
Yeah.
down late and you reverse him to his back. You
Yeah.
reversed him and sucked him back, if I recall right. You were down, and it was like 4 seconds to go on the restart. And
Yeah.
what do you remember about that sequence, if it still comes to mind when I don't bring it up?
It does. Yeah. I don't think about it daily, but it does. I remember having a thought, and again that senior year, having that thought. I think there's 5-6 seconds left on a restart. Okay, I got time to. I can't remember what the score was. I just knew in my mind I said, okay, I can reverse them, or I got time to win still. And got reset. I think I jammed back into him and sort of hip iced him or whatever it was, but caught him on his back there for I think 2-2 to win the match. And at the time, Beast of the East was by far the toughest tournament in the country. Any high school, it was better than Ironman. It was better than all those. There wasn't Super 32, all that stuff, right? So it was Beast, and I believe that was my only. I think that was my only time winning it, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not quite sure, but I remember that was a big tournament for me, just because as a team and everything, we being Waynesburg and not being a huge school, it's not like we had a plethora of people winning that tournament, so. But I do remember that every so often, and I don't know if I've ever watched the match again. It's just all through memory.
Yeah, I just remember being because Mike Rowe had come through the Southern Maryland, Northern Virginia
Yeah.
circuit, so I'd seen him as a kid growing up, and he eventually wrestled Nebraska for a minute, and he was also in that bracket in Fargo
Hmm.
later that summer. Now that's one thing that you did that a lot of the kids these days don't do as much. Is the graduated senior going to Fargo to try to win a junior national title? You'd already won a junior title, you'd won a cadet title, and then you had a junior title the year before. Why go back your senior year in '04 to win another one?
I was told to. I think that no other reason than that. I asked the question to my coaches here at OSU when I came in, and I was living here that summer, and they said, no, you need to. You haven't wrestled since state tournament and a couple other little small for you. You need to wrestle, stay fresh, and that was the only reason. I still think that kids should. I think that they take granted or take advantage of, hey, I need this summer off. I need that. We've never really had time off. I don't think one tournament's going to burn you out, right? I think that when you have something to train for, and when you're looking at it, and that it's an odd time that year because you don't have the stuff every weekend. You're not looking for it. So it just kept me on point. It kept me ready. I think that was probably a big reason of success leading into that fall where I wasn't behind, because I did stay sharp all the way through July. And as you know, that's a pretty dang tough tournament. So I had to get in shape, had to make sure I was cutting my weight right and doing all that. So I think it really helped me propel me into the fall that year and be ready as a true freshman to step out and wrestle.
You'd mentioned your match with Griffin in the state finals. Maybe think of something. Was that the last time you were light for a weight class?
Yeah, yeah. And I knew coach had told me when he recruited me that it was either, probably 25, and then we'll see if you grow. If you don't, great. If you do, we'll just move up into 33. And my sophomore year was pretty tough cut to 25. Freshman year was okay. My sophomore year became pretty tough, and 33 my junior year it felt great because it wasn't it was just I went up 8 pounds, right? So it was just mentally better. And then senior year was another pretty good cut. And and of course international, it got better as I got older and figured out how to be smarter with it. But of course, and then finished at the end of my career at 125, which was probably the most miserable thing I've ever done. But I don't regret any of it. But yeah, that was probably the only time. Freshman year, and senior year. Yeah, freshman year I wrestled 112, and I weighed maybe 105. I couldn't beat Drew Headley, who was our 3-pounder, and and I went up and wrestled 12. I think I weighed in at state tournament with everything on, sweatpants, shoes, everything, and maybe weighed 107. So I was small. I was a small kid until later in life.
When was the last time Drew beat you?
Oh, Drew beat me a lot. I mean, even he might have beat me internationally even after college. I know we wrestled a couple times. I can't remember, but Drew and I grew up a mile apart. Ronnie, his dad was our junior high coach, and he was Carrie's coach in high school down in Jefferson. So that's how we made that connection early on, through the 90s and everything. So, but Drew, Drew was unbelievable. I mean, I couldn't beat him for the longest time, and it wasn't anything other than he was better than me. He was a year older and better wrestler than me. Again, going back to what Southwestern Pennsylvania is, when you struggle to make your team, against a guy that's winning state title, it's an NCAA All-American, he ends up being an All-American, right? Those are the guys that push you and propel you into being who you are. And I was just fortunate, to be similar age, great coaches, grow up in Waynesburg, right? It wasn't anything other than that, than having these guys and their dads who are coaches, really understand the sport at a very high level and push us to that point.
Now, when you talk about staying sharp, you came from a club. You kind of are on that front end of, I guess there's a new generation of the elite clubs. Angry Fish was that club that was really going. Ty Moore, Ray Brinzer, obviously in that Western PA group. I mean, we mentioned McKnight. Jake Herbert's around there too. And I mean, you got personalities like the late Ty Moore and Ray Brinzer being so dynamic with their knowledge, but also just a little off center. With some of their mentality and whatnot. Talk about when you jumped into the Angry Fish Wrestling Club, what it was, the guys around you, and why it worked for you.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, it was the very precursor to what clubs are today, and I think that it really, for me, it started on Sundays. I would go up on Sundays, and Marky would be in the room, and Kerry Regner, and a couple others, and Jake Herbert, and of course Raymond and Ty would be running practice. And it was really just to push myself. And there'd be a couple guys from Waynesburg. We'd drive up together, and it'd be an hour and a half one way, just for a practice for an hour and a half. But I remember, wrestling with Ty, who was, it's Ty Moore, right? He's one of the greatest coming out of Pennsylvania, and especially Southwestern Pennsylvania ever. And then Mark Angle's in the room. And Mark was a guy that I had always looked at as one of the fastest, best footwork guys I've ever seen, wrestle. And these are guys I'm getting to wrestle with, later in my high school career. And these are guys that are leading me and guide me. And then you got Raymond, who's, Ray's, it's Ray, right? I think him, and there's no better way to describe it than that. But we had a very strong, I felt like they were so much different than I was brought up in that I could just lean on them, and they made me so much better of just overall wrestler, right? Ray taught me positions in Greco and all this that I had never even known or thought of. And Ty's just the tenacity and the mindset and the belief. These guys really just pushed me to a level that I just didn't even know was possible. And just, again, fortunate, right? I just happened to be right age, right time, right place, right connections, and I was able to take advantage of them, right? And they really poured into me, and I couldn't ask for just lucky that I was there that time, and we wrestled a couple clubs, duels and stuff, but it was more of a, hey, this is a place to work out, and this is a place to train, and we're going to have the best guys in the area and the state all come to us and train, and that's where it started. and I still remember those practices of being like, damn, that was hard. I just got my tail whipped for 2 hours, right? I haven't felt that in a long time. And you understand, you always think you're working hard. You always think you're doing right. But you just don't know what you don't know, and that place, those guys help push me to a new level.
When you look around, obviously, you and Drew grew up together. So,
Mm-hmm.
there's that relationship and, you guys in your coaching circle seeing each other. And then when you see those guys, Mark McKnight's still around the Penn State program and whatnot, when you cross paths with the guys you grew up with, the guys that you bled with on the mat
Mm-hmm.
and battled with in the room, what's it like to run into those guys now as, you're not kids anymore. You're adults. You've got families. You've got
Yeah.
jobs. Your name's in wrestling, and so are they.
Yeah. I think that you just hit the nail on the head. Like, it's what we do. We talk about family. Hey, how's the kids? How's everything going? How's life? We're just in that next phase of life, right? We went from young high school or young kids. I mean, Drew and I grew up since six. I was 6, he was 7, in the same little league room, right? And all the way through high school, and then he went to Pitt, and I came out here. So I think that you start and you have such a bond that it doesn't the time doesn't really matter, right? You just jump right back into conversation and how your parents are, how your wife's doing, how your kids are, you just jump right into that, because that's we go so far back. We don't have to beat around the bush about the small talk, right? It just gets back into how you're doing, how's everybody doing, and you just go hang out and see them, and it's just pretty. I don't want to say odd, but it's pretty cool to see when you go to these tournaments and you do see people that you've literally known your entire life doing the same thing you were doing, right? And at the same level. I just don't. I just tend to believe that doesn't happen very often. And there's probably 5 or 6 of us that literally have known each other for 30 plus years and competed against each other, and we're still doing the same thing. I just find it hard to believe in another profession that happens.
Going back to that summer of '04, getting sharp before you're heading to
Hmm.
Stillwater. I've already mentioned the Mike Rowe come from behind. You
Hmm.
mentioned Charles Griffin come from behind. Then there's a match in the pools against Jordan Frischkorn from Virginia, and back in the system where the vertical pairing, where
Hmm.
you're wrestling, 50, 60, 70 guys on each half of the bracket. You got to get through to be the last 3 in your pool to wrestle in the All-American round, the pools. You've got Cameron Doggett, who at the time was 1-2 in the country. You're 1-2 in the country. Jordan Frischkorn's 1-2 in the country, depending on if it's win or if it's amateur wrestling, depending on the rankings. This was a buzzsaw, and fast forward in time, the guy you eventually wrestled in the NCAA finals where you won your title, you eliminated him in like round 8, Joey Slaton from Iowa. So he didn't
Yeah.
place that year out of that side of that pool. But the cardiac match, you get rolled multiple times by Jordan Frischkorn in one of these actually, this wasn't even a round robin. This was in, probably round 6, round 7. You come from behind to win that one by a point. The
Hmm.
cardiac Coleman Scott era was nothing new, but what made you? I mean, being so good, you're used to winning all the time. What's it take to be used to being down and know how to come back and win a match against somebody that's spectacular? Because in that era, Mike Rowe was great, Jordan Frischkorn was great. These are tough opponents you had to come back and beat.
Oh yeah. Um, I don't know. I never thought of it as being down. For me, it was always lead management was much harder. I'd rather be down and throw everything into the wind and get after it and throw the kitchen sink at them and see what happens. But lead management when you are up by one was always way harder for me as my whole life. I don't think I got better at that until 2011. When I was 25 years old. Um, you, you, but I just never thought of it anything other than don't try, do. Right. I had belief in my ability to go score on anybody really in the world all the way up through even some of my late wins all the way up until 2012. Right. It was just, I never doubted myself in the sense in those moments. I knew if I just kept doing what I was good at, I would prevail. Right. And I didn't always. Right. But the thought never wavered, no matter what year it was, no matter when it was. I was never out of a match because I had ability to score on my feet. I had ability to turn in parterre and freestyle. I had ability to turn on top and folk style, right? I just thought that. Whether that was true or not, I don't know, right? I just had an internal belief that I could be the best and I could beat anybody, and no matter what the situation is, I can go score. I can go get my hands locked. I can go score. Right. And that's just the way I've always sort of thought about it. And, it wasn't anything more than that. It's probably coming up in a little league program and a high school program that they preach that, it's never over, right? Get after it, right? You've got the ability to score on anybody in here, in this room, then that means you got the ability to score anybody out in the country, and that's just, it's just how we operated. And I think that a lot of us thought that, and, it wasn't much more to it than I believe I can go get this done. Right. And, and then you just toe the line and see if it happens.
In an era now where kids are committing as early as like 8th grade to
Mm-hmm.
colleges and such, what do you remember about your recruiting process and your commitment process? And basically, what was the ultimate decision to go to Stillwater and wrestle for Coach Smith?
It was very condensed compared to what I've been dealing with in the last recruiting these kids, right? I mean, I remember July of my senior year, going into my senior year is the first you are even able to talk to a coach, like a real recruiting process. And then you go to Fargo, so it's sort of put on hold for 10 days, right after you start. And of course, I didn't have a cell phone. Maybe others did. I didn't have a cell phone, so I was dealing with a landline back in Waynesburg and listening to voice or listening to the answering machine every evening to see who I have to call back, because that was my dad's say, if they call, you better call back. And if you don't want to go there, tell them you don't want to go there, and then move on to the next. So I remember vetting through that process, and it was really at that time it was about reading magazines and seeing who you liked. And I remember, I know the NCAA tournament, you might only catch a period of a match on ESPN when they first started airing it. Nothing that I know why, but I would VHS record all the NCAA and just rewatch it. So that's sort of how I became, probably narrowed some of my visits down just by watching that. I had never been to the NCAA tournament until after I'd already signed with Oklahoma State. So leading my whole life, I didn't really know who was great other than watching it on TV for those couple minutes, or the 1 hour section, or reading a magazine or newspaper. And then I just remember everybody reaching out, and of course looked at Iowa and Oklahoma State and OU and Nebraska and North Carolina, and those were my visits. And then West Virginia and Penn State being so close, I figured that those could be unofficial. And that was the max that I did. So I did 7 visits. And again, it was a different time. I took my parents went on the ones you could drive, so they went to, of course, West Virginia and Penn State and North Carolina. But other than that, it was all my own. I'd get on a plane and fly out there, and I'd have to report back to my parents 3 days later, whatever, 2 days later, and say, hey, how was it? Well, this is what I liked, this is what I didn't like. And, so I was making that decision on my own. And it was they were fine with the places I had narrowed it down. They said, okay, we've met all these coaches. They came to the house, every single one of them. We're fine with any of these choices. It's on you now. And I just weeded through it. And I remember coming out to Stillwater. It was one of my last visits. And, just, they had just won the national title the year prior. And, I showed up, and Pat Smith and Mark Branch sort of picked me up and just sort of took me around. And I figured, I realized pretty quickly there was no, that we were just right in conversation. There was no awkward silence sitting in a car for an hour coming from Oklahoma City or Tulsa. I can't remember which one, but it's an hour ride, right? And it was just like, wow, these guys are really easy to talk to, and they're some of the greatest. I mean, this is the first 4-time NCAA champ, and this is a 4-time finalist that are just chumming it up and talking to me, and it's crazy today. I just talked to Branch yesterday, right? And Pat Smith still keep like those. That's what really sold me on this place. And then you get here and you see a bunch of guys that are just like-minded. They're all hanging out. They've all got the same goals. They're not worried about all the BS outside of the room. They're worried about getting better at wrestling, hanging out with their brothers, and taking care of school. That was it. And that sort of just sold me on it. And I remember coming back, and I was like, Dad, I'm going to Oklahoma State, right? And they're like, well, they hadn't met John yet. And I remember John came and did a home visit, and, I committed right there in my living room in Waynesburg. And, that was it, but it was very condensed. So all that happened within know, 2-3 months, everything, 7 visits and 7 home visits, you know, and then a decision to make on my own.
What was there ever, you know, being around college programs a long time, you know, there's programs that take a flyer. They'll like, you know, the mid-major will send an interest card to the elite guys, knowing they're never going to get a visit out of them. But is there one school you remember getting a card or an interest thing from? Like, where is that? You know, those weird ones.
No, I was good. I do remember like a couple of the Ivies reaching out to me and going like, yeah, I think you guys got something mistaken here. I can't, I'm not, I'm just not that smart. Right. And I remember thinking like, wow, that's pretty cool. But these guys, I don't know. Of course, different area. You don't know all the
Mhm.
stuff. I'm like, I can't succeed at this place academically, right? It's just not who I am. And of course, they don't know. Now that I'm in the process, I've been through the process on the other side of it. You got to throw a net out there, right? Because you never
Mhm.
know. You know, but I thought that was pretty cool when you get a couple of those and you're going, oh, wow, these guys think I'm smart. They must not have gotten my transcripts and my SAT scores yet. But no, I was pretty privy to where everything was. And I remember a couple of small coaches, I can't remember exactly who, but calling and they're like, hey, we're just calling your, you know, making sure. I'm like, yeah, I appreciate it, but I'm, you know, I'm not interested. And, you know, it's a thing. My mom and dad did through this process. I had to call everybody back. No questions asked. If they left a message on that answering machine, I had to call them back. And if I wasn't interested, even all the way to the end of the day, when I made my decision, I had to call every single coach that I was still talking to and tell them I'm not going there and I'm going over here. And they made me do it up until the last day. When I made that decision, that night, my dad made me sit on the couch in front of him and call every coach where I wasn't going to, and I'd committed to Oklahoma State. You know, and it was probably the hardest conversations of my life, even though it's not really that hard now looking back on it. That I'm just telling somebody I'm making a choice for myself. But in the moment, as a 17-year-old kid, calling grown men that you've idolized and programs that you've idolized and tell them, hey, I'm sorry, I'm going over here. And some of them weren't happy with it. And, you know, I remember some getting yelled at and this and that by some coaches. And, you know, really just, but, you know, I think that makes you who you are, right? Being very upfront. And it started pretty young in my life. And, you know, I think it's from my parents.
Yeah, and then jumping ahead to your college coaching career, you're looking at like how you've got to recruit these kids now. You said, you know, July 1 before your senior year. Now it's like texting I mean, there's so many different rules and compliance that you got to go through. Okay, we can
Yeah.
talk to the kid here. He can be on campus here for the RTC. You know, there's so many different hurdles to jump through now. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
I guess compare and contrast a little bit what it's like being a college coach now from what you experienced on the other side of being recruited 20 years ago.
Yeah, you know, I think everything that's been created in the last 10 years has been how do we get around the rules? You know, with the RTCs and the local clubs and doing camps at this time of the year to see this kid. Yeah, I mean, you can contact kids June 15th going into their junior year, so it's over a year earlier than I was used to. You know, and you can see a kid August 1st going into his junior year and bring him on campus. So everything's sort of pushed up, and then it's about, you know, to me, and still today, it's about relationships, right? And that's why, you know, we as college coaches or whatever you want to call it, you know, when you're in the college game, you try to do camps strategically around the country. I see a lot of coaches coaching Fargo still, and you do all those things to create that relationship with that kid, maybe at a younger age than you're technically legally able to, you know, per NCAA. So, you know, and that's what it comes down to when you have a strong relationship with a kid, and then he trusts in the system that you have and the people around you and the program around you. You know, and you can put yourself at a way better advantage moving forward when you have some of the best kids in the country that you're training and you're competing with. And you know, and that's the nature of the game now, is just recruiting and developing. And you know, I don't want to get into the NIL space that is all on top of that, right? That's getting sort of out of whack, and sort of out of whack for the entire sport, or the entire collegiate athletics, I should say. Not just the sport; it's everything. You know, but that it is what it is. And you know, we're tasked with a set of rules or a set of standards that we've got to abide by, and that's it, right? And you've got to be the best at them. So yeah, completely different ball. It's not even the same. I think it was a true recruiting process when I was coming through, who could present themselves the best and make the best offer. When I say offer, scholarship, that's all we had to deal with. And so when you're all dealing with 9.9, it's, hey, who's got the best program? Who can put me at the best ability to achieve my goals? That's a recruiting process. I believe that now it's a little bit skewed with all the stuff that we deal with.
When we get to Stillwater, you and Nathan Morgan are kind of connected when it comes to,
Oh yeah,
because they pulled both of you guys out of red shirt 25-33, and you guys are 19-0, 19-1. I can't remember which one of you were undefeated at the time when you both got pulled at the national
him,
duels.
not me.
Okay, okay. So I know you had just the one because there was a
Yeah,
discussion within the rankings like, well, yeah, those matches count now because they got pulled out of red shirt, but you guys were
yeah,
on a tear. And that decision, there were some guys that were doing okay in the lineup, but John was never afraid to pull a guy, and in this case, multiple guys, and put them in the lineup if he thought they were ready. And what were the discussions like amongst the team? I mean, what did you and Nathan again were right there, bang bang, right out of the chute. California, Western PA coming into this blue blood program, and you guys are setting the tone every dual meet right off the bat. I mean, those national duels were, here you go, welcome to
yep,
D1 wrestling. None of this open
yep.
tournament stuff.
Again, there wasn't. Coach had mentioned it. Hey, if you guys are ready and it's best for the team, then we'll make that call. And I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready in the fall mentally. I didn't really understand what college wrestling was. I thought I did. But getting through that preseason and realizing that this is a room full of killers and we've got to be prepared. Nate was unbelievable. One of the most skilled wrestlers I've ever been around, still to date. But there wasn't much discussion. Hey, Nate and I and Dr. Mason were roommates over at Bennett Hall. It was us three in a room, right? And so I remember going back and I'm like, hey, if coach says they need us, let's go, right? And that's just the mindset we had. It wasn't anything other than that. I wasn't making a call to my dad to see what he had to think. I didn't. If coach said go, let's go. And the team needed us. I don't. We could say hypothetically they didn't need us. We had 5 NCAA champs that year on the team and a couple other All-Americans. I think we were doing okay. In the team scoring business. But I think the coach just wanted to start the dual meet off, and he pushed us into those open tournaments that fall. And he said, this is going to be our future, and this is what we need to do. And that's what we ran with. I would say today, I'm so glad that I wrestled that year. Whether I was an All-American or not, I think it made me grow up. It made me realize that there's a level to this that I've got to be better and better each and every time. And I've got to figure this out, and I'm glad I didn't have to wait. And people are like, well, what if you could have won that? I said, oh, that's a big what if. I don't know. I'm glad I got 4 years. I mean, there's guys in college for 7, 8 years now. I was done in 4, and couldn't be more grateful for it. It is a freaking, there ain't anything harder than going through a collegiate season of emotion, of training, of weight cuts. It's just one of the hardest things you can do on somebody's body. So I'm grateful I got pulled out, and it was really just coach saying, hey, we need you. Let's go. Let's get after this thing.
Had some personalities on that team too. One of them was Johnny Hendricks, who really played the villain in that area. I remember, that national duels, I'm standing at Matt's side, and, Hendricks is down to 57 that year. And, I just remember somebody walking off the mat. He had just been in this war. I don't even know if he won or lost, but his face is bloodied. And it was like, that guy's a warrior right there. You guys had some warriors on that team. You're a warrior. Morgan's a warrior. Hendricks is a warrior. Like, who knows how you can describe Steve Mocco, but it's talk about that era of where you came in and what it meant to you and your teammates around you to be part of such a great program.
So that lineup that year, right? I'm an 18-year-old kid from coming out here. I knew that the team was good, right? I mean, they'd won the national title the year before, so there's no. But again, this is sort of pre-internet. There is no flow. There is no. So how do you track everybody that everything that's going on in the college realm when you only get just a small snippet of it? And I wasn't just a guy that was traveling around I was just living in my own world, playing 3 sports. I played soccer in the fall, baseball in the spring, right? So I had a lot going on. And I remember walking in, 18-year-old kid, and it's me, and the lineup ends up being me, Nate. So I was, I think, 8th that year. Nathan was around to 12. Daniel Frischkorn, who unbelievable. As you know, Daniel, it was fourth, I think, that year.
Yeah, he was fourth, and after him and Ronnie Delk were battling for that spot,
Yep,
John made a decision
yep.
there.
Made a decision on two guys that were going back and forth, and we got the fourth best kid in the country, right? I mean, that's the level that we were at. And Espo was 49. Kevin Ward was Zach won a title that year, and Kevin Ward, I think, was round of 12, round 16 that year at 157. Johnny was at 165 and won a title. Pendleton was 74, won a title. 84 was a kid named Clay Kerr. And then 97 was Jake Rochold, won his, I think, second title that year. And then Mako won a title that year, right? Like, so me walking in to that lineup, I didn't have to guess what it took to be the best, right? I just walked in and looked, said, I'll just do what these guys do. Okay, just do what those guys do, And I fell in line and ended up, being close with Zach and roomed with him for the next 2 years after my freshman year, right? And so I was just sort of following what these guys were doing. I didn't have to have this huge guess of this is what I need to do to be a national champ. This is what I need to do to be an All-American. No, I just need to listen to coach and watch these guys work, right? They live the right lifestyle. They do the right thing in season, out of season, and they're great humans, right? And that's all I looked at. So it was very simple in the sense of just look at the people around you and follow along. We don't need to rewrite the book here, and I don't need to be this outlier. I just need to do what these cats do. They're winning at the highest level. Might as well do that, and so that's the way I thought about it.
You said earlier, it was almost Yoda-like. There, you don't try, you do. So when you hear and you see what there is to do, how hard is it for you to actually put that into practice, though? There's one thing of being able to seeing yourself, visualize yourself doing it, but the body doesn't always translate to what the mind wants sometimes. How did you go ahead and take that next step and get better?
I think that for me, again, just very, very fortunate to have a mindset and a little bit of talent, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. I don't know how much I had. But the people that were around me, I remember after it would have been my sophomore year, I believe. And I was going up to 33 for the next year. And Pat Smith worked on me with elbow control. I never knew what an elbow control, or I knew what it was, but I never really developed it. And Pat worked with me for one whole summer, and I wasn't allowed to hit anything but an elbow. And of course, if anybody knows, Pat's a lefty, and I hit an elbow control to predominantly what a left leg lead does. But even though I'm a righty, all because I learned it from Pat, right? And John hits it on the other side. But I spent one summer, and that's all I was allowed to do. I wasn't allowed to do anything. And so I think to answer your question, I was just lucky to have people around me that cared for me, and they could break it down for me, and they put the effort into saying, hey, Coleman, this is what we're going to do every day for 3 months. And it wasn't just, hey, go do it. He's standing next to me. He's showing me, he's doing it with me, right? And this is, in my mind, the greatest college wrestler that ever lived. Of course, I'm sure arguments now, but in 2004, that is the greatest guy that, in my mind. So I don't know. I don't know how it translated. I think that the biggest thing was I had the ability, I had the willingness, and then I had the people around me that they had the willingness to help me. I think that you need both of those to be great. First off, you have to have the willingness, which is your mindset and the heart to do it. Then the second piece of that is that you have to have the ability to do it, right? Not everybody is I don't want to say athletically and not whatever it is. I can't really hit a baseball that well, right? It's just I don't have the ability to, and I could probably learn it, but I just haven't spent the time to do it, and I was just again fortunate that my ceiling could keep growing. And some people they just hit their ceiling at an earlier age, and I don't know. I wish that there was a better answer for that. I just think that it takes. I was probably lucky to make some decisions I made at a very young age to put myself in a situation to better me, and I didn't even know it. Making the decision to come to Oklahoma State and being around all those guys I named, and then plus Mark Branch, Pat Smith, John Smith, Eric Guerrero, Shane Roller, Jamel Kelly, Muhammad Law, Daniel Cormier, Johnny Thompson, Tyrone Lewis, right? Like that was our room, right? How the hell don't you get better? Plain and simple.
You brought something up earlier about playing 3 sports. Now we've got the elite kids coming through, and they're
Yeah.
pretty much 13 months a year they're wrestling. And I realize
Hmm.
that's play on words there, but you know the balance. I'd always say that freestyle and Greco is cross training for high school season, and then
Hmm.
but at some point your body wrestles so much you need recovery time. How much did playing soccer and baseball help you?
Huge.
When you got to college to be a full time wrestler.
Huge. Every athlete has. I only have so many double legs I can hit before I just can't hit them again. I only have so many single legs, so many high crotches, right? An NFL player only has so many hits they can take, or let's say not an NFL, a football player only has so many hits they can take. A running back only has so many cuts they can make before it's just done. They can't do it anymore, right? We don't know what that number is, right? Nobody just wakes up and says, Coleman, you can only hit 100,000 doubles in your life, and then you go to hit the next one, and something happens and you're done, right? It just doesn't work anymore. These kids are finding these numbers at a way younger age. I think you look at the national tournament and see how many shoulder braces and knee braces compared to when I was in school. I couldn't even tell you what a shoulder brace was because we didn't have a person on our team that wore one, right? And through my whole college career, and we were all multiple sport athletes, right? And what it's come down to, and I've got 3 kids of my own, and so it's a very strong in my household. It's very I'm very adamant. You will play multiple sports, right? Because you only get so many hours, so many hits, so many numbers in one sport, and we got to make sure we maximize what you want to do. And especially if you're training at a very high level, you only get so many years of training at that high of a level before your body just breaks down. So society has become so money hungry, and I understand it's very hard for certain families. Like if I'm just on the fortunate side that if my daughter wants to play high level soccer and high level lacrosse and something else, that we can actually afford it because it's $2,000 to $5,000 per sport per year for her, right? So I can understand where people can't physically afford to do it, right? Now the boys are a little bit different, a little bit easier, right? We wrestle in the local club, we play baseball over here, we play football. It's a little bit cheaper, but at some point that money, when people just want to make money and they say you need to do this 12 years, you can't miss here, or you're not on the number 1 team and you can't do this, you can't, it became a system rather than an organic thing where I grew up in the local soccer club, the local wrestling club, and the local baseball organization, right? That was it. And that's how we all went through high school. And I think you would probably say, we didn't just say, oh, I'm just a wrestler. No, when you're in a small town, if you're big, you're the offensive line in football, or the defensive line. You're a heavyweight in
You got to
wrestling.
play 3 sports for your high school team to be successful.
And you're throwing shot put and track, right? Like that's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And as a town, as a community, it's just what it was. And we've lost all sense of community, all sense of town. We've lost all sense of pride. I mean, we've got kids that don't even wrestle in their high school season anymore, right? My dad would that not happening here, right? In a different era now, but I don't know. I just think that we've got a certain number of hours that we can put on our body, and we're getting to that hour point way earlier in age because we do, like you said, 13 months a year. It's crazy. It's crazy. I'm 38 years old and I need a break. What makes you think that a 12-year-old doesn't? Right? And we as a sport, specifically, people go, well, why is there a high burnout rate? And I ask every adult, well, do you like being on a diet and cut weight, making weight every weekend? Well, no, I don't do that. Okay, so what makes you think a young kid wants to do that for 20 straight years? Right? I did it, but I will say I did not cut a pound until I was high school or later on, and really didn't cut much, until a little bit my sophomore, junior year of high school. But really college, right? That's when I really cut weight, or we would say diet. So
Weight management. Let's do the weight management. That's the
weight
buzz. That's the
management,
word we like
diet,
to
cut
use.
weight, whatever you want to call it, right? Like I didn't do that till later in life, right? So my years I had a lot of years left once I hit college. I wasn't burnt out. I grew to love the sport more later in life than I did earlier. And I think it was because of all this stuff. I did play those sports all through high school. I did didn't cut a ton of weight or weight. I didn't have any of that till later on in life. Um, and that's where, as a sport, we get lost in this. I need all these trophies, and I need this, and I need to be a Triple Crown winner, and I need this big belt at Super 32 from 6 years old on. And nothing against them, but that's just what society has come to. And we need to make sure we tweet about it and Instagram about it, and so everybody knows how good I am. To me, that stuff's pointless. My kids get probably 10 to 15 matches in a year as a 10-year-old, and that's it. Now we practice. We practice.
And it's fun, right? It's fun for them,
it's
right?
Fun. Loves it. He's begging to go to freestyle. Dude's never wrestled freestyle other than watching me. Like, we haven't even wrestled a tournament, but he's begging to go to practice twice a week with baseball going on, right? And that's what you want. Yeah, I'll take you, bud. I'll take you. I'll drop you off, right? We lucky got some good people around here to train you, but that's what you want. It's not me, hey, son, we got practice tonight. No, he's going, hey, Dad, I know I don't have baseball tonight. Can you drop me off out the club, pick me up after Cash's practice or late? That's the cool stuff, right? And I'm going to keep continuing to do that until he's ready and mature enough to start wrestling at a higher level and putting more time and effort and training at a different level, because you only have so many years, so many hours of that high level.
When we move to getting inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, so much of the credentials are based on college and post-collegiate success. We look at your college success. We've touched on your freshman year. You end up finishing 8th as a true freshman. Then your sophomore year, you're the 6th seed, and you get bounced in the first round by Bryce Lenhart from Wyoming. This is probably not something you'd had experienced very much in your career as a first-round loss. What goes through your head in that moment? What is the readjustment your sophomore year to come back through? And the guys you beat were hungry. And look at some of those guys you beat too. It's like another world of, like, look who's coaching. You beat Javi Maldonado, he's coaching. Yeah. Obi Blanc, he's coaching. You beat an eventual NCAA champ Paul Donahoe. You've got a who's who on the backside, still all trying to get the same thing. You'd been on the podium once before. Where is that adjustment? How difficult was that sophomore season at the NCAAs?
I remember I thought, going into that, we were favored to win as a team, but it wasn't nearly as clear cut as it was the year prior. And we ended up winning by pretty big, but it wasn't leading into that tournament. So there's a little bit more at stake, right? Like as a team aspect. And I remember Coach I've never seen him so upset with me. And after that moment, I said, screw it. What's worst going to happen? What, I can get another butt chewing? I'm coming for blood, right?
The worst that could probably happen to you was redoing that haircut you had that year too.
That's it. And boy, I had to back that up. I had to do something because Coach was on my ass about it. And it was a bet that I had ended up winning. So I really threw all care into the wind after that. It was that moment where you say, I'm not worried about losing. I'm just worried about giving my maximum effort. And really, I was so upset and mad that I was going to take it out on every kid I wrestled. And it was going to be pain. And that's probably not the best thing to say, but that's the way I had to operate. I didn't care. I was going to come back and give it everything I had every single match. My body freaking hurt. I remember just feeling that Sunday. I just couldn't even Saturday. I woke up and you got the Conci semis, and I didn't even want to. I'm asking myself, how am I going to warm up? How am I going to do this? My body, I can't walk. My neck hurts. My back, and then once you get into it, you're good. But it was just something that I always sort of remember. Just adversity, overcoming things, obstacles that you don't see happening. I never envisioned that happening. That wasn't part of the plan. So I had to bounce back. I had to do it for the team. It wasn't for me. It was for my family, my team, and that was it, right? To show that, hey, I'm not that guy. I'm somebody different. I can rebound off this.
We go to the next year. You move up. You end up losing in the finals to a guy who was pretty good out of Jersey, Matt Valenti, and the weight cut. You said that was kind of gone after your sophomore year. You got a little bigger your senior year, but that junior year, was that refreshing for you, or that season?
Very.
What did it mean for you to have you and Nathan both went up?
Yep.
What was it mean for your success and the team success, and ultimately was it an opportunity for you to get better as a wrestler? Or, people say you can learn wrestling when you're not cutting weight. When you're cutting weight, you're cutting to beat the scale. You're not cutting to beat an opponent.
That's right. That's right. And I think that it was just took a big load off of me going in. Hey, I can just this weight cut, but whatever it was way different this year, and I can just get better at wrestling. And I'd spent that whole summer, like I said, I knew I was going up, so I spent that summer just getting better at wrestling. I wasn't worried about anything other than getting better at wrestling for months at a time. So it wasn't, it was part of me going up, but it was my mindset change, finishing 8th and 5th and realizing, well, this sort of sucks, right? I mean, I hate to, I'm not again, I don't want to sound arrogant, but like I wanted to be a national champ, right? And so 2 years in a row of not accomplishing that and realizing, hey, I'm okay, I'm halfway done here. All right. Now I'm at a 50% chance, not a 20, to win a title. I've got to really get better at this thing that I want to do if I want to become a national champ. So I had to make some changes in the way I wrestled and keep developing and not just rely on a double leg and be good on top. And that's where I really developed, my elbow control and some other things. It was just everything worked together, and then I went up in weight class and I felt better during the year, and really, grew to manage that, and I didn't feel small, didn't feel any of that, so it was really good for me. And again, having a room with Nate Morgan where today I couldn't beat him, right? Couldn't beat him then, never beat him, right? The guy was so good. Always having that guy right next to me, always kept me humble and know that there was somebody always out there ready to beat me.
Again, this is about you and being in the Hall of Fame, but sometimes, the guys that get forgotten about, not because of, they weren't good, but Nathan Morgan is a guy that, the California kid, people are like, oh, must be a surfer dude. He gets from Bakersfield. Okay. It's not like it's, but it's a different feel. I mean, you're from out, the grinding Western PA, then you have a chance to hit the slickers from New Jersey. And then, what's it like mixing it up with a California guy for the first time in that situation? And how do those feels in the wrestling room make you better as an athlete?
Nate was a guy that literally, like we always say, well, I had a go-to shot. Mine was a double leg and then turned into my elbow control. But and that was the extent of really what I had. Nate could drill 20 different shots and then go out in the match and hit 20 different shots, all in the same match. It was the most remarkable thing I've ever seen in my life. I would see him hit. I'm like, oh, that ain't gonna work. And then I'd be out there wrestling him, getting hit in it, right? And then he'd go out in the match and do it against the number 5 kid in the country. It was unbelievable of just how he operated and how he flowed through skill, how his mind was just – he was ahead of his time, to be honest. He had gone overseas prior to getting to OSU and lived in Belarus with some really high-level guys. And so his mindset and skill was so far beyond mine. He was doing things that I didn't even know existed, and not just in – skill or in the rest of it, but just like, hey, I'm going to go live overseas for a month and learn from, like, I didn't know who the heck was good at, I didn't know Russia was the best country in the world. Like, I was just living in this naive little coal mining town. I didn't even know there was a world championships. I just knew there was Olympic game. Like, I didn't know any of that. And so then I meet this guy that's, oh yeah, I've been studying this guy. I've got this film on Bela Glazov and John Smith, and there's just stuff that I just didn't know existed. And so when I step in the room and I'm going like, whoa, how can I be like, there are levels of this stuff and I'm behind, and he made me realize that very, very quickly. And I had to figure a way to, I lived with him. I was my roommate. I had to figure a way to at least have something to get him with at night and not just get my tail whipped every day and then go over there and try to hang out with him. Right. I had to find a way to say, hey, I got you today, or got one over you. And, I don't know. He pushed me in different ways than he probably ever even knows.
Junior year, you beat Nick Simmons, who had beaten you the year before in the consolations. You beat him to make the finals, and then Matt Valenti, who he's going to come back and eventually be the head coach at Penn. But this is a guy that, in your age group, this is a Jersey guy. I'm guessing you guys had crossed paths periodically prior to that. But what was it about Matt that made him such a tough competitor?
God, he was good. He was a good wrestler. his ability to score. Of course, he reversed me in that match, and then his ride. He had that crotch claw mat return that I physically I stood up 100 times. And I was mat returned 100 times. Right. He just had a tenacity and an ability that was probably under. I don't want to say undervalued. Not in my mind that was undervalued, but probably in the perspective of the wrestling world. His ability to score on his feet, his defense was unbelievable, and then his mat wrestling was very, very good, both ways, top and bottom. And that made him probably one of the most complete wrestlers of our era. In that having 2 titles and running through some people. If you look at it, some high level world class people in his era. And I ended up wrestling him in I think the semis at the Olympic trials in 2012, and I wasn't able to get a win on him until freestyle. And I had to get a couple years older to figure out how to beat this guy. It is again a guy that pushed me, and it's to date and will be my hardest loss ever. Losing the national finals and realizing you get 365 days to reverse the feeling that you have today. And that's a very, very tough pill to swallow.
Moving to your senior year, you eventually you win it. Clear, we know the end result of your senior year, but looking through that draw again, you're not the 1 seed here. You're the 3 seed. Looking at Joe Baker, that's a California guy to wrestle Navy that was like one of the hardest nosed dudes ever. Probably known for him and Fanthorpe bleeding all over the place. I think it might have been that year. Jimmy Kennedy in the semifinals, and then Joey Slaton in the finals, who we had alluded to. You had wrestled him in freestyle when you were in high school. But I will look at this match when you won. Mike McCormick was officiating. I don't know if you ever knew that. I just know that because he's from my hometown. But I look at it, and then, yep, that's Bull Island. Little note that your celebration is one that will be in my mind because I don't think I'd ever seen anybody. Okay, you weren't running around with a flag like Johnny Hendricks was, but the sheer moment of elation, it was like put you on a side, spin around like a top multiple times.
That's right.
I mean, never seen anybody so happy to have won a national title, and you did it with, you're a Cowboy. You pinned a Hawkeye in the finals to win the title. It's kind of hard to get more storybook than that.
I think that's why the emotion came out, right? It was everything that all the emotion from the last 3 years of not being there, and then building up and the rivalry with Oklahoma State and Iowa. A guy that I had a tight match with during the year, and really getting to a position also, with a crackdown position that we're sort of known for here at OSU, and getting a pin. I mean, you always dream about those. Hey, I'm going to pin this guy. Oh, really? This guy's pretty good, but it ended up happening in a big moment for me. So I think that's where that emotion came from. And, I've always had a big support system in my family and my friends, and, there were a bunch of them in the stands. And again, I do all that, everything I've done in my career, it was very little for me in those moments. All the people that gave their lives to me, and I was the selfish one going through all this. And, for 32 years, I've been, doing what I want to do in this sport and taking away from something else. And whether it's my sisters, my parents, whether it's their time, whatever it is, right? So when you get in those moments, and I remember all that emotion coming out of me, and I remember my dad and to him, he can say whatever, but that was probably his biggest moment. I can remember how excited he was. My dad showed no excitement, yay or nay, right? Good or bad. He was a very even keel guy until that moment, the first time I saw him after the match. And I just remember thinking like, wow, that meant so much to him. And that's why I was doing this sport at a very high level. It wasn't about me and what I wanted to do a little bit, but it is what I wanted to do. But in those moments, I was doing it for them. There was somebody else behind me. There was somebody else that gave their life and gave their effort for me to be in this position. And it's the least I could do is just, make them happy and give it everything I had, because that's all I was going to do.
As we get to your college career, when, as an adult now, you're talking about kids now, being selfish as an athlete. And then there comes a time where you meet somebody. Oh, guess what? there's something other than wrestling that's in my brain as an athlete. What's the timeline in meeting your wife, and then say, all right,
Yep.
we're doing the college thing, we're doing the senior level thing. How does that all tie into the next steps post college for Coleman Scott?
So met my wife February, early February 5th, 6th, whatever of 2008. Whatever the Super Bowl was. So if Super Bowl of 2008, we actually wrestled Minnesota that day, and she was friends with some of the mat maids and the mat maid presidents, so started helping out with them and Brandy Esposito and Zach. We won the duel, and then we went over to Luke Silver's house. I remember for a very low key Super Bowl. We'll call it a party, but it was for us to watch the game after a duel in the middle of wrestling season. So not much going on, and they introduced
not a
us
whole lot
there.
of eating because you got to make weight a week later.
Exactly. We might have had. I think Steve Silver ordered some pizza and wing. Some very basic stuff that none of us really ate. And then, but they introduced us there and sort of just progressed from there. And then we got married a couple years later, and a year later had my daughter. And and I remember going through. We were both graduating. I graduated that fall, and being done, and then just sort of we continued our relationship. And I remember I was a couple years later, and going to say, hey, this is what I want to do, and I want to propose to her. And I was old school, and so I called her dad. Or talked to her dad, and which I believe everybody still should. I don't know if that happens still, but
yeah, I did.
Yeah, I talked to her dad. I'm training for the Olympics, right? I'm making $12,000 a year, and if I don't win a tournament, I don't have money. And she's working full time. And I remember just having the conversation of, well, what the hell are you doing? You've got a degree and two minors, and you don't have a job. And I'm like, it'll work out, right? I'm going to train definitely through 2012 and see where it takes me. But don't worry, I'm going to win, and I'll be an Olympic gold medalist, and we'll have whatever job we want. And he's like, but you're not understanding. You want to get married prior to that, and you don't have a job, and my daughter's working full time supporting you. And I was like, I understand that. It'll come back around. I promise. That's just how this world. Just being a non-wrestling person, he didn't understand. My mindset and thought process, and which I don't think
And
that's not normal.
she's an Oklahoma native too, so
Yes.
it's a little bit of that little middle America, like little
Yeah.
the what's the word I'm looking for, the value system is a little
Yes.
different,
Yeah.
than some places these days. It's still kind
That's
of
right.
old school.
It's very old school, and but they they loved who I was, and knew we were getting married for the right reasons and all that. And so he was fine with it. It was just a grown up conversation that I would probably have the same thing if a guy came to me and is making $12,000 a year and said, I want to marry. Oh, okay. What are we doing here? But they ended up being still today some of the biggest supporters of me and my career and my life. And and so then we end up starting our family pretty quick, and had Leighton in 2011. Leading right up to the games, and I think that she was actually the Monday before World Team Trials in 2011, which luckily was in Oklahoma City. Is when Leighton was born, and then we knew we wanted to have 2 or 3 kids, and we wanted to start pretty quick, so I could eventually retire at a younger age, or we could, and travel around and not be older parents. We wanted to have our later in life and be able to get them through school and then enjoy ourselves, for multiple years then. So, and then we just continued to, of course, Stetson was born in 2014, and then Cash, my youngest, is 2018. So, and we're definitely done now at 3. That's plenty in my mind. Having a Cash who's 6 and nuts, it made us realize, okay, we're good.
Yeah, and I guess it's also interesting because a lot of the wrestlers' wives who say they meet as freshmen, they go through the entire college career. They understand. They've seen it. What was the adjustment like for you to kind of tell Jessica, this is how senior level is completely different than college. This is, yeah, I've got a coach, I've got a club, but there's no, the schedule is, all right, I'm every 3 months I'm in Kirkplakistan, for example. This is not like the college schedule. How did you have to brace her for what the international was going to be for that quad?
The best part of meeting your wife the last semester of your college career, and her coming from a small school in Oklahoma that didn't have wrestling, she didn't understand what it was. Um, and then so she really grew her the international scene was really where she grew to love wrestling, and so that was the norm to her. Me leaving for 2 weeks at a time, a month at a time, and then coming back. So that became the norm to her. She didn't know any different. So and again, I wouldn't be able to do what I wanted to do without a support system and without her understanding that. Of saying, hey, this is what he wants to do. This is what he loves. He will be gone for the next month in Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine all together, be bopping around. And, I'm going to sit here and do our thing with raise the kids and all that. And, work at the same time. So it takes a very special person. And I'm just fortunate I found one that was able to do that and understand that. But yeah, I was just lucky that she didn't really know what the normal wrestling season was.
When we look at that quad, you hadn't been on a world team. You've got an interesting situation to make the team, and you do it in Times Square. I mean, explain the 2012. Actually, I'm going to back up a little bit. I remember, I think the most miserable I ever physically saw you was 2009 Sunkissed. And I see you in the lobby, and I was like, oh, okay, Coleman's cutting down to 60. And you could just see, I mean, you were sucked out, and we're still hours away from weigh-ins. I was like, I didn't even want to say hi because I've made the mistake of talking to wrestlers at the wrong part of the weight cut. And it was like, you look like freaking Skeletor. And, here we are still 3 years out. And I mean, getting down to the cut, yeah, it's not every single week like college wrestling, but at some point there's a change in how you were dropping weight and how you were managing it. What was that balance like? How did you have to learn how to do that with the international weigh-in styles? And generally, I mean, was it overstated or understated how miserable you were that last, I guess, 24 to 48 hours before stepping on the scale?
Oh, I was miserable at the front end of that international career, right? But because I didn't know anything. I didn't do anything right. I didn't. I just ate what I wanted to eat and drank a bunch of pop and just my normal thing that I got away with for my whole life. And I just remember a couple.
It's soda, by the way. It's soda. It's not pop. I know that right now.
Southwestern Pennsylvania pop. Uh, I think that it took me years of failure to realize that, man, I'm doing this at a high level, but I'm really not, right. I'm just masking everything and competing well, but I don't feel my best. I don't feel, so really in the 2010 moving into 11, did it better in 11, and then really just started to change. And my training weight, what I ate, I became very regimented. My meal prepped. I did everything. I'm just lucky, right timing. Johnny Hendricks was, man, one of those title fights, or I can't remember. He was fighting in the UFC and big fight, and so they all came up to Stillwater to do some of his wrestling training. Sort of moved his whole camp up here, and I was in this time, and he had a dietitian at the time that none of us could afford. I wasn't making any money, right? And I got to know the guy, and he really gave me some just little bits and pieces of why you do what you do, when you do it, and I stuck with it, right? And it really changed my life, and it changed my system. And it was not easy. It was a meal prep every Sunday, Wednesday as a family, and this is what I'm going to eat. I ate the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for over a year, right? Didn't change any bit of it, and I cut out some things, and then so my weight became a non-issue, and I was training at 41, 42, and making 60 kilos, 132, and and that was nothing, and I felt stronger. My shape was better, and then I just focused on getting better at wrestling. And I developed that overtie ankle pick stuff, and all in that same moment in the fall of 2011, moving into the spring of 2012. So it was just right time, right place, right people.
2012, The Olympic year it's weird because the weight hadn't yet been qualified when you go through. You got to win the trials. You gotta, and you do it in Carver, and then which is just always odd for a cowboy to
Yep.
to actually not be booed in Carver, but then you go out there and then you've got to wait for Sean to qualify the weight. Then you
Yeah.
get the wrestle off. I mean, okay, from a nerve wracking standpoint, you have to go from rooting for Sean to wanting to beat Sean in a very short window of time. Well, first you got to win the trials, so that window
Yep.
of time, how talk about the pressure through that.
Um, I was. It was an odd time. Um, you look at it and you go, I remember being upset that that certain guys weren't in the trials bracket, right? Sean, understandably, Reese is out; he's hurt, and I'm going, what the hell? I got to go to this tournament just to qualify myself for what? At the time, we didn't know what, right? I'm going to go win the tournament, and there wasn't any discussion on there's a wrestle off at Times Square. That didn't happen until the day after I won the trials in Iowa City, when everybody sat down and they decided that we're going to wrestle off in Times Square to beat the streets. And Coleman, you're going to wrestle Reese one match, and then the best 2 or 3 against Shot. That was not decided. So me going into the trials was just, hey, this is a tournament I got to go win, for the unknown, right? For the unknown, to give myself a shot to be an Olympian, right? Because if you want to be an Olympic champ, you got to be an Olympian first. And I remember going to that tournament. I felt great, and I was like, it's my time, and I'm going to do it. And I had some, like I said, upset struggles leading up to it, but I trusted the team around me and the people around me, and I liked wrestling in Carver. Hell, I got booed all the time in there, but we didn't. If there's one thing, we didn't lose in Carver my 4 years, right? Never did we, and nor did I, right? So it's, to me, that was a good place to wrestle, So I was excited about it, and like I said, I didn't, by the time the tournament came around, I was just focused on winning, what I had to do to be the best. And then I remember sitting in the stands the second day, and Coach Smith and Guerrero and Kenny Monday came out and they said, okay, well, the wrestle off's going to be beginning of June at Beat the Streets, and you're going to wrestle outside of Times Square, and you're going to wrestle Reese once and Sean twice if the weight's qualified. And, but I remember going to New York City that next week, because there was 2 last chance qualifiers. And I think Reese and I believe this, and I could be wrong, but I believe I flew to New York City for just in case Sean didn't qualify, and we were going to have a 1-match wrestle off to see who went to Helsinki for the last chance qualifier. And we woke up Friday morning down to wait, because I was waiting that day to wrestle Saturday to see, and watching Sean and China wrestle a true 3rd match, and came down to clinch, I believe, to see if the weight's qualified. And sure enough, Sean did it. So yeah, cheering for him, yeah, unbelievably, happy. And then flew right back to Stillwater and went to World Cup for, I think I spent 2 or 3 weeks in Baku, Azerbaijan that year. Had a great World Cup, and then prepped, and that was in May, and then went right into June for the wrestle off. So.
Now, there's one thing too that you just brought up that this past trials, it always comes into mind. You go through the pomp and circumstance, introducing the team, and you're not on the team, and you've got to go
Yep.
through the flowers, the
Yep.
presentation there. What's going through your mind when you're up there? Okay, that you just said it. I'm not on the freaking team yet, and yet here's all this ceremonial things you've got to go through.
I remember it vividly. I've never been more pissed off in my life. Right? Not at anybody, but just like, you're sitting there, and Sam Hayeswinkle, you're in line. Sam Hayeswinkle, Olympian, Sam Hayeswinkle, right? And then it's Olympic trials champion, Coleman Scott. And you're like,
Yep.
are you kidding me? And then it's Jared Frere, Olympia. The rest of the team's Olympians, right? And I'm sitting there going, well, am I really taking a picture with you guys right now? Right? We're going to do this, right? This is the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life. And I'm sitting out here, the only one in the freestyle team not qualified, right? But I just went through the gauntlet and wrestled all these dudes. And and again, it wasn't at anybody, or I was just, this is stupid. What am I doing? Let me go home. I got to get back to work. This is dumb. I don't want to do this. And that's the thought process I had in the moment, because it freaking stings when everybody else is laughing and smiling and high fiving. And I'm sitting there going like, I still got
3 to 4 matches left before I can be called an Olympian, and we've got to maybe do some other things to even be considered that. So it was a time of a very odd time, and those guys this year, as I'm sitting there, I know what they're feeling. I knew what they were feeling. Spencer and Zane, I knew what they were feeling, and it's an uneasy feeling.
You make the team in probably one of the most dramatic. I mean, sun is down. You've got the match against Bunch. Then, you hit the big throw. He challenges it. It gets overturned. It doesn't get overturned. You actually get a better score out of it. And then there's Coleman losing his mind again with the flag, double flag, just times. I mean, yeah, it's one thing to do it in an iconic arena like Carver or Gallagher Iba or something like that. But Times Square is probably not anything that's on anybody's, bingo card of I'm going to win a match in Times Square to make the Olympic team. This is take us through that series of emotions there.
I think there's only a few times in life that you'll ever experience pure joy, and like pure joy, like don't care what's around you, don't care what's going on in the world, pure joy. You're just in a moment of pure joy. And that's probably the moment I have of just, it was a blur, right? I remember the whole day was a blur, and got banged up that morning in my warm up and was a little hurt. But just remember having, I think there were 60 some people there for me, my family and friends just came to watch it. And, I think it was pure joy for them as well, right? Like, holy cow, did we just watch what I thought we watched? Did that just happen in Times Square? And, because I haven't really watched it too much, but you see some pictures and you see, Jessica's face and my parents and my sisters and my aunts and uncles and all my friends. Like, it was just a look of everybody. I mean, Coach Smith, I've never seen him act like that and almost tackle me off the thing. And Espo and Eric, like that whole group of people, just it wasn't just me, right? They put so much into me. And that's how much more it meant. Through the hard times, through winning the trials, through winning the restaurant, like all these things, there was all these hurdles that we just kept getting over. We kept jumping over, and it wasn't me jumping; it was us together. This whole little posse of people of people that were behind me and my little group and my family, like that we were doing this thing together. I was never out there alone doing this, and I think that's what comes out in those moments when you realize, okay, wow, I just did something pretty special. And it wasn't even, a thought process, or it wasn't even, this is what I'm going to do when I win. I had no clue, right? I was ready to get back out on the mat and finish the period, and that happens and you go, wow, okay, that's it. Right. And it's to be an Olympic champion. And that's what all I ever dreamt about as a kid. That was the pinnacle since I've been 10 years old. You got to make the team first. Right. And in this country, that's pretty dang hard. We were at the front end of where we are today with some of the greatest wrestlers ever. And, so I just look at it as a time of pure joy and elation for myself, my family, my friends, the people that are around me. So it's just one of those things that you can never replace.
We get to London, there's an opportunity here. You win your first two bouts and you reach the semifinals. You're in the Olympic semifinals. Here you are, anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes, because you're in a rule set. You're competing in what is pretty much considered as a dark ages of wrestling. With with the 3 periods. In some cases, I call it the binary code of wrestling, because there was a lot of 0-1, 1-0, 1-1s in those situations, especially over with our friends in Greco. But we look at this situation where, like, you've always had a tank. You've always been able to be, late in the matches. You're a comeback guy. We've established that point. Damian Hahn famously said, if there's time on the clock, there's time to score. Coleman Scott, you kind of live that with some of your performances over the years. You get to the semifinals, and it's, you lose 2 periods to a young stud named Togrul Asgara from Azerbaijan. I guess, what's it like to, back this up a little bit before you lose, going through the whole process of, the opening ceremonies, which some athletes that have to compete right off the bat tend to abduct because you're on your feet for 8 to 12 hours or however long it is. the moment of going through the pomp and circumstance of the Olympics, when you take your competitive desire out of be like, okay, you have a chance to soak this in. What was that like to go through the Olympic experience?
Opening ceremony was one of the greatest things I've ever been through, right? And luckily, wrestling and freestyle was at the back end of the game, so we weren't quite worried about that. We actually left London to go to Belarus for a couple days, for a week, right after opening ceremonies. But just being a part of a group that's so uh, minute and small, and like it's like you get into the village and you're like, wow, these are the best athletes in the entire world in one little half block area in these apartment buildings that you're eating next to Usain Bolt, and you see this guy over here, like all these people that you just, it was sort of in a dream world, right? They're on ESPN. They're not next to you, and so I thought that was some of the coolest things that I could have done is going through the opening ceremonies and just being in the village and seeing all these people walking around, drinking coffee, saying hi, and then getting to the games in the tournament, it was first time I walked out of the tunnel, something I never felt with emotion, and probably why I wrestled a little bit tight that first match. But after that, it was again. I was like, okay, I'm good. Let's go. Let's do everything I can and let it hang out. And I'm not worried about winning and losing. I'm worried about giving it my best effort, and that's what I felt I gave. You know, uh, losing in the semis, I never thought about losing. So I was how I never thought that would happen. In that moment, and it was. I remember Jim Ravanack was a big reason why he came and talked to me in the hotel room and put it in perspective. But if he didn't, I don't know if I would have come back a couple hours later and wrestled for bronze. I would have wrestled, but I don't know if I would have done very well because it was me and Tervel who we had both just lost, and we're sitting there together, sort of sulking and going, "What the hell just happened? We didn't envision. We never thought about what we got to do now." And Jim came in, and Jim was been one of my mentors since high school, and just sort of put it in perspective. Hey man, you got 97 people out here that flew all the way here to see you. You think they're feeling bad for you because you're wrestling for a bronze medal in the Olympics? Quit feeling bad for yourself, man. This is a huge accomplishment. Being a medalist, and that sort of was like, man, he's right. He's right. There's more to it than just gold, right? And I have to flip that mindset now because it wasn't a 2-day tournament; it's a 1-day tournament. And I was having to be back at the arena in an hour to get ready to wrestle for a bronze medal. But I again, it was something that in that moment it wasn't for me. I came back to wrestle for all the people that were there for me and that have been there my whole life.
Bronze medal match, Kenichi Yamamoto of Japan. You lose the first period, win the second. And again, we go back to the late cardiac, heart attack inducing Coleman Scott, big moment. And it comes back to the move that while you feel like is you're known for, a lot of the outside of the Western PA and Oklahoma fans would not really think double leg with Coleman Scott, even though that was one of your bread and butter moves forever, but it's also one of your earliest, most successful takedowns. Like you hit arguably maybe the first, or it depends on if you're Brandon Slay, it's the second best double leg you've seen at the Olympics. If you're Coleman Scott, it's probably the first best because you talk about iconic Olympic double legs.
Yeah,
you Slay Burroughs are up there.
Yeah, I think both of them got me beat. I can still remember when Slay double-legged Satiev, head on the same side, hitting it, putting him to his butt. Like those are way bigger shots than I ever had. So I look at it and go, I was just doing what I could. I was doing, I was doing, not trying. I remember coach just saying, shoot, 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 shoot. And that's all I was wanting to do. And I just said, okay, this is going to happen because
You got
I don't know
low
if I'll ever
power
have.
through.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'll ever have a chance to do this again, and I didn't. So luckily, I took advantage of it, and again, it was an emotional time, and it was for the 90-some people that happened to be in the stands for that came to support me. It wasn't about me; it was about all the coaches that had put their life on hold so they could help me reach this crazy feat, and my family and my wife and my in-laws, all those talks we had. Okay, this is for you guys. This is what, it's not about me and my credentials and, medals. There's a lot more to life than just wrestling and medals, right? And I had to figure that out.
He bellies out, and then I'm sure you remember it. I'm sitting there across the arena, and then there's just the pounding of the mat. Like, the clock isn't over yet. I mean, it's short time, but it's like, boom, boom. It's like you knew it. And, you didn't get to hear, ladies and gentlemen, please rise to national anthem. You didn't get to hear the 15 greatest words in sports. But when they put the bronze medal over your neck on the podium, next best thing. We've been taught we lose, we got to get the next best thing. Next best thing. How awesome was the next best thing in London?
It was, again, you go back to surreal, right? Like you go, am I really standing on the Olympic podium getting a medal, and all these photographers are telling me to bite the medal, which you've seen for generations and ages and decades. Is this really happening to me? Right? It sort of puts it all your life, everything into perspective of, wow, I can't believe I'm in this moment. I didn't think about this moment. I didn't think about what this would be like. I just wanted to win a wrestling match, so it was probably one of the greatest for myself, my family. You just look back and, I didn't, again, in the moment you're going like, wow, I'm third in the world at the Olympics, right? I've got this and London had these big old medals, and it's like, I'll go down. And again, I never thought leading up to this moment that, there's only, at the time there's 7 of us every 4 years. Now there's 6 of us every 4 years that even get this opportunity to maybe stand on the award stand. Right. So again, just grateful for all the people that put their life into me and all those all that sort of emotion, every thought that you have in that time, that's what comes out. Right. Like I have my parents, my sisters, my wife, my in-law, they all sort of put their life on hold, my coaches, so I could chase this crazy thing. And I did it, a piece of it. I did it, so it was a great moment for me. And really just remember that, the only thing that pissed me off is I had to listen to Azeri national anthem, while I stood up there. But other than that, yeah, it was one of the best moments of my life.
And their anthem does sound kind of sinister. We've heard it. It's it sounds like, Star Wars Imperial Death March kind of.
That's right. Yeah.
But, as we look back now, so that's your competitive career is over. Well, granted, you did make one more run at it, which I mean, anything about that last shot, you're like, well, let's give it a go. I mean, that's not what you're remembered for, but I guess explain giving it one more go.
I knew I knew I was in the time of 2012, like debating whether I wanted to be done or not. And at the time I was like, you know what? I think I can't be done yet. I think I might miss it a little bit. So once I continued to start that cycle, I always had in my mind, if I start a cycle I'm going through the whole thing, right or wrong, good or bad. And I'll have no regrets doing it. And I still don't. Right. And of course, I didn't foresee us being dropped from the Olympics. I didn't foresee us coming back. I didn't foresee us taking 60 kilos out and me having to go down to 57, right, when I made that decision. But, I have no regrets in anything I did. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't my best. I got hurt in 2013 and tore my pec and did all that, right? So there was all these things, these hurdles. But I think it made me a better man at the end of the day because I went through that and I had those failures and continued to compete at a high level. I thought a high level, and did I come up short? Yeah, but it made me who I was, and I was able to compete until I was 30 years old, and not many people were able to do that.
So you piece all that together. You get the 3 high school titles. You've been on the podium at the NCAAs 4 times. You stood on the top of the podium for one of the most iconic programs in college wrestling history. The New York Yankees, if you could, talk about titles, the Yankees of college wrestling. And then you've represented this country winning an Olympic medal, something that is a very elite company. And you put all that stuff together. You bundle all that. Are you at all surprised, again, when we circle back and say, hey, you're going to be a distinguished member of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame?
Yes. Yeah, I am. Yeah, it never dawned on me that this would be an opportunity or option. like never. Even last year, right? Like people said, "Oh, you could be in the Hall of Fame." Get out of here. Get out. I'm not. There's no way I can be in the Hall of Fame. I don't. That's something that's. Um, I don't know. I just never. It just. That's not something you wake up and say, "I want to be in the Hall of Fame one day." Right? That just was never a thought for me, and that's just how my mind operated. I wanted to be a national champ, Olympic champ, and of course came up a little short, and that's all. I just wanted to turn my focus into coaching after that, and but I never really put much thought into this could be and this could happen. And, of course, I've been through it 100 times, 1,000 times, just living here for 10 years prior and then now back here. So it was always something that was intriguing, but I never said, oh, man, I'm going to have a granite plaque up there with my face on it forever. I never really looked at it that way. And all the accomplishments still, it's surreal, and again, just grateful to the people that have led me here and got me here. And, because it's not about me. It's not, I couldn't have done this thing without the hundreds of people that have propped me up and pushed me here, and the village of people that are still behind me.
2024 will go in Honors Weekend in June. What are the next steps in wrestling for Coleman Scott?
No clue. No clue right now. With everything going on, I don't know. We might have seen my last days in the sport. I don't know. I'm not sure, and so that's for me to figure out, and time to get on with my family and be around my kids a little bit more. And I've got some time to figure that out. And that's where I'm at today. So I don't know. I don't know what the sport's got for me anymore, Jason. I'm not sure. So I think I've got to do some deep dive in the next couple weeks. And like I said, with my wife and my kids, and really pour my life into them and to see where I'm at. And, our kids' school's ended today, so we're starting summer school, so I get a little bit more time with them, and just excited about that right now. And that's sort of where I'm at.
Coleman Scott, it is to have your face etched in stone is, again, before you even age 40, it's like, it's one of those things you're like, this is kind of nuts. So to put in perspective, you'll walk through those halls the next time you walk in, and after the unveiling, and you'll be up there next to the greats. Who is probably the one, where would you like your plaque situated? If you had an opportunity to say, hey, Jack, hey, Leroy, let's move this around. Put me next to this guy. Or a woman in this case, too.
I've actually never thought of that, but probably Carrie Colap, just pretty much same town. I mean, sister was my English teacher in high school. Is the lineage, probably just somebody that I could, whether he knows it, I don't know if I've ever told him, pay a large portion of my thought process and career to him, just because I didn't have to be the first one from Greene County to do the things that I wanted to do. He did it. So it's a lot easier being second. Being him and doing what he did, can't imagine, the outlier that he was, and to chase crazy things, right? So I think that I look at that, and that's probably somebody that I'm where I'm at because of him, even if he never said a word to me, just by me be looking at his career, and watching him.
Coleman Scott, congratulations. It's cool from where I sit to kind of sit there and see athletes from my era, our era. I mean, I'm not much older than you, but I saw you come through in high school. Logan Stieber also goes in with this class, saw him coming through. Takara Montgomery's in this class, saw her on that first Olympic team for women in 2004. So there's just so many cool things to be able to see. And then to be able to kind of chronicle your journey has been a pleasure for me. And I know it's an honor for the Hall to have you enshrined. It's an honor for those that have known you. So congratulations on a great career representing this country, not just Oklahoma State, but also the United States. So again, congratulations are in order for you and your induction.
Thank you, and I appreciate it, and appreciate all the work you do for this sport. Right? It's not easy, and I know you treaded through a lot of mud to get where you're at, and so we appreciate you.